Imagine paying thousands of dollars in HOA dues every single year, only to be told you had to tear down the very thing your grandfather built with his bare hands. Now picture the order coming from Karen, the woman who rolls up in a pearl-white Cadillac SUV. Sunglasses, bigger than her head, telling you your family's legacy doesn't align with community standards. What would you do? My name is Daniel Harris. Folks around here call me Danny. I am 50 years old, a retired Marine, and these days I work with wood chairs, tables, whatever keeps the bills paid. After 20 years overseas, I came back home thinking I'd finally get some peace. When Dad passed in the year 2020, he left me the cabin at Cypress Lake. Not much to outsiders, just a weathered place tucked in the pines. But to me, it was sacred ground. And more sacred still was the old wooden dock and the hexagon gazebo at the end of it. My grandfather built that dock in the 1920s, plank by plank. No power tools, just hammer, sweat, and grit. 3 generations of Harrises have proposed marriage at that gazebo, myself included. Cypress Lake ain't natural. It is a reservoir, created when the county built the Cypress Dam back in the 1950s. My grandfather worked on that dam crew. Came home every night with sawdust in his beard and blisters on his hands. He built the dock as a gift to my grandmother when they could not afford much else. For us, it wasn't just wood over water. It was memory nailed into every board. Growing up, Cypress Lake was simple. Folks minded their own business. Old-timers fished at dawn. Kids swam till sundown. My neighbor, Earl, a Vietnam vet, fixed every lawnmower in town for free. Miss Patty baked pies that could win awards, but refused to sell a single slice pies meant to be shared, not sold. She always said, life was honest, even when it was hard. Then came Cypress Shores in the year 2020. Sleek houses with glass walls and rooftop decks sprouted like weeds along the shoreline. And leading the charge, Karen Whitmore, 47 years old, sharp as barbed wire, and twice as mean. She had blown into Texas after divorcing some oil executive in Houston, bringing her money, her lawyers, and her hunger for control. The first time I met her, I was grabbing gas for my truck. Karen was at the counter, wagging her manicured finger at the poor kid, ringing her up, complaining about property values and aesthetics. When she turned and saw me in my worn boots and Marine Corps cap, her smile looked like plastic stretched too thin. You must be one of the originals, she said, dragging the word like it meant uneducated. Did not take 6 months before her beautification campaign rolled out. Violations started raining down. Earl's John boat was an eyesore. Patty's garden was agricultural misuse. And me, my family dock and gazebo were suddenly unsafe structures and aesthetic liabilities. The letter came on a Tuesday. Bold HOA letterhead. 30 days to remove non-compliant structure. Fines of $500 per day thereafter. I read it 3 times, each word heavier than the last. That dock had held my father's ashes when we spread them in the lake. That gazebo was where Lisa, my late wife, said yes through tears and laughter. And now Karen wanted it gone. I drove straight to her mansion, a glass and marble monster perched over the lake like it owned the water itself. She answered in linen pants and pearls, holding the letter I had received like it was gospel. That dock, she said, sweet as venom, doesn't align with our elevated vision for Cypress Shores. We are curating a luxury community. Mister, Harris. Not running a fishing camp. I laid my grandfather's building permits on her granite counter. This dock predates your HOA by decades. It is legal. It is family. And it ain't going anywhere. Her smile sharpened. Predator, hiding behind perfume. How naive. Daniel. The community has voted. 30 days. Or the fines begin. And right there, in her marble castle smelling like imported candles, I realized something. Karen wasn't just attacking my dock. She was declaring war. And she had no clue who she was messing with. Karen wasted no time. Just 3 days after our confrontation, she scheduled what she called an emergency HOA board meeting. 7 o'clock on a Tuesday evening. Of course, right when most working folks couldn't attend. And the venue, her own mansion. With floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Cypress Lake, like it was her private kingdom. When I walked in, the smell of roasted coffee and fancy pastries filled the air. But it couldn't mask the stink of a rigged game. Karen had packed the living room with her hand-picked crowd, about half a dozen families. All newcomers with money thicker than molasses. Their cars outside cost more than I'd earned in a whole year swinging a hammer. On my side, just me, Earl, and Patty. Outnumbered before we sat down. Karen tapped her pearls, smiled at the cameras of her friends' iPhones, and slid a fat folder onto the glass coffee table. The cover read, Dock Safety Assessment in bold red letters. She opened it like a prosecutor unveiling evidence. This professional report confirms what we feared. She purred. Mr. Harris's dock is a liability. Structurally unsound. A threat to property values and community safety. I leaned forward, scanning the so-called assessment. My jaw clenched. It wasn't written by any licensed engineer. It came from Whitmore Consulting, her cousin's firm out of Dallas. The pages were nothing but buzzwords and grainy photos of shadows made to look like cracks. This is a fraud, I said flat out. My voice echoed over the marble floors. Your cousin never set foot on my property. That dock has survived 90 Texas summers. It'll outlast half these glass palaces around the lake. Karen's smile didn't break. It just turned sharper. Like a knife sliding from a sheath. Mr. Harris. Personal attacks won't change facts. Community safety comes first. She raised her manicured hand, like a conductor. All in favor of requiring immediate demolition. Hands shot up. Quick as soldiers, saluting. 7 in total. The vote 7 for demolition. 3 against. Patty whispered. I'm sorry. Danny. While Earl shook his head. Fists balled. Karen tapped her pearls. Smug as a queen. You have 30 days to comply. After that, $500 in daily fines. That night, I sat on my porch with Earl and Patty. The cicadas sang loud in the pine trees. But all I could hear was Karen's voice, dripping with arrogance. Earl lit a cigarette, muttering, She thinks she can starve us out with paper and ink. Patty sighed. Danny, you can't fight money with nothing but stubbornness. But they didn't know. My father's words still rattled in my head. Property fights aren't won in boardrooms. They're won in courthouses. In dusty old filing cabinets nobody bothers to check. So the next morning, I drove to the county courthouse in town. The place smelled like mildew and history. I combed through file drawers until my fingers turned gray with dust. Hours passed. Nothing. My back ached. My eyes blurred. Then, in a drawer labeled 1927, 1939. I found it. A county survey map from 1928. Faded. Yellowed. But clear as day, my grandfather's dock sat squarely on a county easement. Public right of way. That meant the HOA had zero jurisdiction. Even better, I uncovered HOA bylaws written decades later that specifically exempted heritage structures existing before the association's founding. My dock wasn't just legal, it was untouchable. The next HOA meeting, I didn't walk in alone. I walked in with County Clerk Miss Ramirez, a woman with 30 years of patience and a glare sharp enough to cut marble. Karen started her act again. Her voice syrupy sweet. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to finalize enforcement. Actually, I said, dropping the survey map on her shiny table. We're here to talk about jurisdiction. Miss Ramirez laid out the documents. Her voice crisp and final. This structure sits entirely within county easement boundaries. The HOA vote is invalid. Legally unenforceable. Karen's face went through 3 colors, pale, then pink, then red. That's impossible. She hissed. Your research was incomplete. Miss Ramirez replied. County easement law supersedes private covenants. This dock stays. The room went silent. Even Karen's friends stared at the floor. That night, I walked out knowing my dock was safe for now. But deep down, I also knew I had just kicked a hornet's nest. And hornets, they always swarm back meaner. Karen didn't back off after losing her first big swing. No. She doubled down. And this time she came at me with what Earl called the death by 1,000 cuts strategy. First, it was petty fines. She claimed my truck, parked in my own gravel driveway, was commercial equipment. That was $50 a day. Then she said the American flag on my porch was an unapproved structure. Another $50. The mailbox, too rustic. That one was $100 violation. Day after day. Envelopes showed up. I stacked them in a shoebox, watching the numbers climb higher than I could pay in 10 lifetimes. By her math, I owed nearly $10,000 within a few months. Then came the harassment. A private investigator parked outside my cabin for hours, snapping pictures like I was some criminal. Karen's board sent anonymous letters to my neighbors saying I was a violent veteran with a temper problem. She even called animal control on Earl's old hound, claiming it was a dangerous breed. Earl slammed his fist on my porch rail. She's trying to bleed us. Danny, make us quit. But I wasn't about to quit. I'd survived sandstorms, bullets, and 20 years of deployments. I wasn't gonna let a pearl-wearing tyrant break me with paperwork. So I went back to the courthouse, dug deeper, in a box labeled Water Rights. Cypress County, 1950 to 1960. I found something that made my pulse race. A deed transfer, signed in 1954, showing my grandfather had purchased not just land for the dock, but partial rights to Cypress Dam itself. I blinked, reread it twice, then 3 times. The words stayed the same. My family had inherited ownership stake in the very structure that held the lake in place. When Dad passed, the dam rights had quietly rolled down to me. It hit me like thunder. All this time, Karen thought she controlled the lake with her rules and her fines. But legally, I held the key, literally. The county had issued a physical brass key to the dam's spillway gate, stored in a locked cabinet at the courthouse. My name was on the deed, plain as day. That night, I told Earl and Patty over coffee. Earl nearly choked on his cigarette smoke. "Boy, you mean to tell me you own the handle that keeps this whole lake full?" Patty covered her mouth. "Lord have mercy. Karen has no idea." I didn't tell anyone else. Not yet. Power like that isn't something you wave around. It's something you hold close until the right moment. But inside, I felt something I hadn't felt since the Marines. Leverage. For the first time, I wasn't just defending my dock. I was sitting on the one piece of ground Karen couldn't touch, no matter how many fines she printed. And I knew, sooner or later, she was going to push me hard enough that I'd have no choice but to use it. Memorial Day weekend of the year 2021 rolled around, hot and bright. Texas sun blazing down like it wanted to peel the paint off rooftops. For most folks, it was a time for grilling, fishing, or watching kids cannonball into the lake. But for Karen, it was her coronation day. She had been bragging about it for months. The grand opening of her Cypress Shores luxury lakeside retreat. Banners went up, catering trucks rolled in. A bandstand was hauled onto a rented barge. She even invited a local television crew to film the ribbon cutting. The plan was simple: show off her vision to investors. Sell the story of Cypress Lake as her masterpiece. And bury the old traditions under champagne glasses and polished speeches. But she didn't know I had a different show planned. By 8 o'clock that morning, I was standing at the Cypress Dam with Earl at my side. In my hand was the brass key, older than both of us, stamped with the year 1954. I also had the official inspection order signed by the state. Thanks to months of quiet paperwork, the dam hadn't been lowered for maintenance in more than 2 decades. By law, it was overdue. When Deputy Alvarez from the county sheriff's office pulled up, his cruiser lights flashing red in the dawn, I knew it was real. He tipped his hat, checked the paperwork, and said simply, "You're good to proceed, Mr. Harris." By 9 o'clock, cameras rolled at Karen's mansion dock. Champagne glasses clinked. She strutted across her new pier in heels that looked like they'd snap on the planks. All smiles for the television. She raised a pair of golden scissors, ready to cut the ribbon. And then, down at the dam, I turned the key. At first it was quiet, just a deep groan of rusted gears waking from a long sleep. Then water surged, a low roar at first, building louder, until the spillway foamed white like a wild river. Within an hour, the lake dropped nearly 2 feet. By noon, it was down 6. People gasped. Kids pointed at stumps rising from the muddy shallows. Boats tilted at awkward angles. Stranded in the muck, fish flopped in newly exposed shallows before darting back to deeper water. And Karen's luxury retreat, her sparkling dock hung crooked in midair. Her boats stuck like toys in a puddle. She screamed, threw her wineglass into the mud. Cameras caught her shrieking at me, red-faced and trembling. "You're destroying everything. You can't do this." Deputy Alvarez stepped between us. "Ma'am, this is a state-mandated maintenance operation. He is the legal rights holder. You interfere. You're obstructing the law." Karen tried to push past him, tears streaking her makeup, shouting about lawsuits, terrorism, revenge. But the cameras kept rolling. catching every second the mighty HOA president unraveling for the world to see. By sunset, the party was over. Her investors huddled in angry clusters, whispering about fraud. The television crew aired the footage that night, Karen shrieking, to me calm, the deputy explaining the law. By morning, every resident in Cypress County had seen it. Her empire cracked in one day. The luxury retreat was worthless without water. Property values plummeted. Investors demanded their money back. And for the first time in a long time, neighbors walked up to me not with fear, but with respect. Some even laughed out loud. About time somebody put her in her place, Earl said, raising a cold beer in my direction. Karen was finished. She just didn't realize yet how deep the mud went. The weeks after Memorial Day felt like a storm had finally passed over Cypress Lake. For the first time in years, neighbors weren't whispering in fear of fines or sneaking around worried about aesthetic violations. Instead, folks met at the general store, laughed, swapped stories, and shook their heads at how far Karen had pushed us. But Karen herself, she wasn't about to go quietly. Her lawyers filed motions faster than weeds sprout in Texas heat. Emergency injunctions, cease and desist orders. Even one filing that claimed I had engaged in eco-terrorism. But every document was shredded in court, the same way her pride had been shredded on live television. The judge, a straight-talking man named Judge Ramirez, read the inspection order, read the deed with my family's name on it, and tossed her arguments like trash. Each failed lawsuit drained her fortune faster than the dam drained the lake. She turned to social media next. Facebook posts popped up like wildfire. Unstable veteran sabotages community luxury retreat, under attack by rogue neighbor. But the video of her meltdown at the ribbon cutting had already gone viral. Folks saw her screaming at deputies, mascara running down her cheeks. And nobody bought her version anymore. By July, foreclosure notices dotted her fancy development. Contractors walked off, unpaid. Investors sued her personally, demanding every cent back. One hot evening, Earl and I sat on my porch, the sun bleeding orange behind the pines. He chuckled, shaking his head. Danny, I've seen generals lose battles overseas with more grace than Karen lost this lake. I laughed. But deep inside, there was a weight too. Winning felt good. Sure, but it also felt heavy. Fighting her had taken years off my life. Still, something else returned. Purpose. After Lisa passed, I'd been drifting like a boat cut loose. Karen's war, as twisted as it sounds, forced me to stand tall again, to use my discipline, my skills, my stubbornness. Somewhere between court filings and dam schematics, I found myself living again instead of just surviving. By autumn, Cypress Lake was thriving. The state's environmental office even sent a team to study the recovery. Fish populations bounced back stronger. Families fished from the shore again. Kids rode bikes down to the water. Laughter echoing across the pines. And the old dock, my grandfather's dock, wasn't just tolerated now, it was honored. The new HOA board, elected after Karen fled the scene, voted unanimously to pass what they called the Heritage Preservation Act. From then on, any structure older than the HOA itself would be protected, not punished. A bronze plaque went up at the gazebo. Harris Dock, built 1928. Preserved for future generations. The day they unveiled it, I stood there with Patty on one side and Earl on the other. My throat tightened. Eyes stung. Not because of the plaque itself, but because 3 generations of memories had finally been respected. Life slowly turned sweet again. Clara's niece June, who'd moved back from Dallas after her divorce, started stopping by with casseroles. At first it was neighborly. Then it was more. We'd sit on the dock, talking till stars came out, her laughter dancing across the water. For the first time since Lisa, I let myself imagine a tomorrow. Karen's name, meanwhile, became a ghost. People whispered it only as a warning. Don't pull a Karen. Realtors used it as a cautionary tale when selling homes around the county. Her empire was dust. Her reputation ruined. The last I heard, she had declared bankruptcy in Arizona. No more Cadillac. No more mansion. No more boardroom throne. Just another name in court records. And every time I crossed the dam, I thought about how close she had come to erasing my family's legacy. How she believed power lived in fines and threats. But real power, the kind that lasts, lives in memory. In community. In the stubborn will of people who refuse to bow. By the second year after the floodgates opened, Cypress Lake didn't just recover, it flourished. Clearer water, stronger fish, healthier trees along the shoreline. Rangers from Austin came to study it, shaking their heads, saying they had never seen a reservoir bounce back so fast. The community bounced back too. The new HOA, stripped of Karen's iron fist, went back to what it should have been all along, fixing potholes, mowing common lawns, keeping the trash bins lined up. No more spying. No more anonymous fines. Folks finally trusted each other again. Every summer now, we hold a festival at the lake. No champagne. No red carpet investors. Just neighbors grilling ribs. Kids painting signs about conservation. And local bands playing on a flatbed truck. We call it Heritage Day. The gazebo is lit up with strings of lights. Families take photos there. And every person knows exactly what it stands for. Standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. As for me, life found me again. June and I got closer. Real close. One crisp November evening, she brought a thermos of coffee down to the dock. The moon was rising silver over the lake. She leaned against the rail, looked me in the eye, and whispered, "Danny, you carried this whole place on your shoulders. Don't you think it's time somebody carried you for a while?" I didn't answer with words. I just reached for her hand, rough from baking and gardening, and held it. For the first time in a long time, I felt whole. The dock creaked under us. The same wood my grandfather hammered in place nearly a century ago. I could almost hear his voice. Steady and calm. Build it to last. Son. Build it so love has a place to stand. Karen's name. She's a ghost now. A cautionary tale. A whisper. Don't pull a Karen. They say whenever someone gets too bossy at a meeting. Funny thing is, she thought she'd be remembered as the queen of Cypress Shores. Instead, she's remembered as the woman who lost everything in a single afternoon because she picked a fight she couldn't win. I don't gloat. I don't celebrate her ruin. I just smile, knowing my family's legacy outlived her schemes. Sometimes, at dusk, I walk across the dam with the brass key still in my pocket. The spillway hums with history beneath my boots. I stop at the center, look out at the shimmering water, and think about how close we came to losing it all. And I wonder about you, whoever's listening to this. Maybe you've got your own version of my dock. A tree your dad planted. A porch swing where your grandma told stories. A patch of land your kids play ball on. What would you do if somebody like Karen tried to take that from you? Would you pay the fine and stay quiet? Or would you stand your ground? Even if it meant turning the key and draining the lake. Tell me in the comments. I read every story. And maybe, just maybe, yours will be the next one I tell.